It was a chilly afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind of day where the sky hung low and people hurried past each other without a word. Inside a small corner cafe, the smell of roasted coffee beans mixed with the faint hum of jazz music. Keanu Reeves walked in quietly, wearing his usual simple clothes, a faded hoodie, jeans, and worn sneakers. No entourage, no cameras, just him. The door's tiny bell jingled as he entered, but no one paid much attention. He found an empty seat near the window and took off his sunglasses, gazing out as if lost in thought. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Emily was juggling orders, her apron slightly wrinkled, hair tied in a messy bun. She smiled at every customer despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Her movements were quick, careful, almost apologetic. You could tell she was trying her best. At a nearby table sat three businessmen in suits, loud, confident, and clearly enjoying their lunch break more than anyone else in the cafe. Their laughter carried across the room like sharp blades cutting through the calm atmosphere. "Hey, miss, you got our order wrong again," one of them barked, snapping his fingers. Emily flinched. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir." "I'll fix it right away." The man rolled his eyes. "Maybe if you actually listened instead of daydreaming, you wouldn't mess up simple coffee orders." The others laughed cruelly. One whispered something about her shoes, old and worn out. Another smirked, probably her first real job. Poor thing. Keanu's eyes shifted toward them. He didn't move, didn't speak, but you could tell he was listening, observing. The same quiet focus that once made him John Wick was now fixed on three arrogant men and one struggling waitress. Emily placed their corrected order down gently, apologizing again. "Thank you for your patience," she said softly. "Yeah, whatever," one muttered. "Just don't spill it this time." Keanu looked down at the simple black coffee on his table. His jaw tightened slightly. A few seconds later, Emily approached him, her smile returning, even though it was trembling at the edges. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked politely. He looked up, his voice calm and kind. "Just a coffee, please." "No rush." Her shoulders eased a little. "Thank you, sir." As she walked away, the laughter started again, louder this time. Keanu took a slow sip of water, watching her hands shake slightly as she poured another cup. He didn't need to say anything yet, but something in his eyes had already changed. The cafe's cozy warmth now felt heavy with tension. Even the music seemed quieter. People began glancing toward the loud table, discomfort spreading through the room, and that's when it happened. The moment that would change the day entirely. What Keanu did next left everyone in that cafe speechless. Emily returned to the counter, trying to hold her composure. She forced a smile, wiped her hands on her apron, and kept serving other customers. But her eyes, attired in red, had told a story of quiet pain. At the far table, the businessmen hadn't stopped. Their voices grew louder with every sip of coffee. It wasn't just jokes anymore. It was mockery, deliberate, sharp, cruel. "Look at her," one of them sneered. "She's shaking like she's never seen a customer before." Another laughed. "Probably just scared she'll lose her minimum wage job." "Can't blame her. It's the only thing she's got." Their laughter filled the cafe, drowning out the music. Keanu watched silently from his corner. He didn't move, didn't frown, just observed. But his calm eyes carried weight, like he was measuring every word, every gesture. When Emily brought their refill, one of the men pretended to trip her as she passed. She barely managed to keep the cup steady, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the edge. The man laughed loudly. "Oops, my bad. Guess you're as clumsy as you look." A few nearby customers glanced over. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered, but no one said a word. Keanu's hand rested on his cup. He watched Emily take a deep breath, steady herself, and continue working. Her professionalism didn't crack, not yet. Finally, she reached his table again, placing his coffee gently in front of him. "Here you go, sir. One black coffee." "Thank you," Keanu said softly. "You're doing great. Don't let them get to you." Emily blinked in surprise. The kindness in his tone, so genuine, so simple, almost made her tear up. She nodded silently, whispering, "Thank you." But the moment was short-lived. From behind, one of the businessmen muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, looks like she's got a fan now. Careful, she might spill on you next." The others burst into laughter. Keanu didn't react. He sipped his coffee slowly, eyes still calm. But beneath that calm, something was shifting. A quiet fire, the kind that doesn't explode. It waits. Emily walked away quickly, hiding behind the counter. You could see her hands trembling as she tried to clean a cup. She bit her lip, fighting back tears. The men's laughter echoed again. One of them said, "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you smile more? Maybe we'd tip better." That was it. The entire cafe went silent for a brief second. Even the barista behind the machine froze. Keanu's gaze lifted, slow, deliberate. He didn't say anything, but his presence alone felt heavier now. The kind of silence that makes even laughter die in your throat. Emily turned away, pretending not to hear, but a tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, still trying to keep serving. Keanu leaned back in his chair, still silent, still waiting, but his eyes followed every move. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was deciding. Outside, the clouds darkened, as if the world itself was bracing for what would come next. Engagement break. Have you ever seen someone being disrespected for no reason? Tell us how you reacted. Also, where are you watching from? Comment your country. We love seeing our global family here. Would you like me to continue with part 3, 700 words, where the tension explodes and Keanu finally begins to step in? You said part 3, 600 words, ChatGPT. Said absolutely. Here's part 3, 600 words, of your cinematic and emotionally charged story. They mocked the waitress, but Keanu Reeves was watching. Part 3, the breaking point. The cafe had grown painfully quiet. Even the soft jazz seemed to have lost its rhythm. The air was thick, a silence so fragile that one wrong word could shatter it. Emily walked toward the businessman's table again, carrying a tray with refills. Her hands were trembling, but she kept her smile. She wanted this shift to end. She wanted to go home and forget the faces that mocked her, but fate had other plans. As she leaned forward to place the cup in front of the ringleader, a man with a gold watch and an even bigger ego, his phone buzzed on the table. Startled, Emily's hand jerked slightly, and a thin line of hot coffee splashed across his sleeve. The man shot up from his seat, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, his face turning red. The cafe froze. All eyes turned to them. Emily's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, sir." "I didn't mean?" He barked, cutting her off. "You're a complete disaster. Can't even handle a tray without messing up." His friends snickered, one of them recording on his phone, thinking it was entertainment. Emily tried again, tears filling her eyes. "Please, I'll get napkins, Don't bother," he snapped, stepping closer. "You shouldn't even be working here if you can't do something this simple." Keanu set his cup down, slowly, deliberately. He rose from his seat, calm, steady, and silent. The motion alone drew attention. Every head turned toward him. Emily turned, startled. "Sir, please, don't get involved," she whispered, shaking her head. Keanu gave her a small, reassuring nod. His eyes, gentle but unyielding, met hers. Then he looked at the man towering over her. The businessman scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be? Her savior?" Keanu said nothing at first. His voice, when it came, was quiet but firm. "She's already apologized. That should be enough." The man laughed sarcastically. "Oh, that's rich. What are you, some kind of hero? You got no idea what this idiot just did to my suit." Keanu's tone sharpened slightly. "I saw what happened. It was an accident. The only thing she's guilty of is working hard while you try to feel powerful." The words landed heavy. The man blinked, thrown off by the calm authority in Keanu's voice. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was suffocating. Even the barista behind the counter had stopped moving. Emily stepped back, clutching her tray. Her eyes darted between the two men. The businessman crossed his arms, trying to regain control. "Listen, whoever you think you are." Before he could finish, Keanu's gaze met his, steady, unwavering, disarming. "Respect," Keanu said softly, "doesn't cost anything. But losing it, that can cost you everything." The man's mouth opened, but no words came out. His friends shifted uncomfortably. The entire cafe seemed to be holding its breath. Emily's tears finally fell, not from humiliation, but from relief. Someone had finally stood up for her. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just stood there in calm, grounded, unshakable. The kind of silence that speaks louder than anger. The businessman muttered something under his breath and sat down, avoiding eye contact. His arrogance had melted away, replaced by quiet embarrassment. Keanu turned to Emily, his expression soft again. "It's okay," he said gently. "You handled it with grace." She nodded, still trembling, but her smile, this time, was real. And for the first time that afternoon, the cafe felt warm again. If you were sitting there, would you step in or stay quiet? Be honest in the comments. The cafe had grown painfully quiet. Even the soft jazz seemed to have lost its rhythm. The air was thick, a silence so fragile that one wrong word could shatter it. Emily walked toward the businessman's table again, carrying a tray with refills. Her hands were trembling, but she kept her smile. She wanted this shift to end. She wanted to go home and forget the faces that mocked her. But fate had other plans. As she leaned forward to place the cup in front of the ringleader, a man with a gold watch and an even bigger ego, his phone buzzed on the table. Startled, Emily's hand jerked slightly and a thin line of hot coffee splashed across his sleeve. The man shot up from his seat, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, his face turning red. The cafe froze. All eyes turned to them. Emily's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean..." "Didn't mean?" he barked, cutting her off. "You're a complete disaster. Can't even handle a tray without messing up." His friends snickered, one of them recording on his phone, thinking it was entertainment. Emily tried again, tears filling her eyes. "Please, I'll get napkins, Don't bother," he snapped, stepping closer. "You shouldn't even be working here if you can't do something this simple." Keanu set his cup down, slowly, deliberately. He rose from his seat, calm, steady, and silent. The motion alone drew attention. Every head turned toward him. Emily turned, startled. "Sir, please." "Don't get involved," she whispered, shaking her head. Keanu gave her a small, reassuring nod. His eyes, gentle but unyielding, met hers. Then he looked at the man towering over her. The businessman scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be? Her savior?" Keanu said nothing at first. His voice, when it came, was quiet but firm. "She's already apologized." "That should be enough," the man laughed sarcastically. "Oh, that's rich. What are you, some kind of hero? You got no idea what this idiot just did to my suit." Keanu's tone sharpened slightly. "I saw what happened. It was an accident. The only thing she's guilty of is working hard while you try to feel powerful." The words landed heavy. The man blinked, thrown off by the calm authority in Keanu's voice. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was suffocating. Even the barista behind the counter had stopped moving. Emily stepped back, clutching her tray. Her eyes darted between the two men. The businessman crossed his arms, trying to regain control. "Listen, whoever you think you are." Before he could finish, Keanu's gaze met his. Steady, unwavering, disarming. "Respect," Keanu said softly, "doesn't cost anything. But losing it, that can cost you everything." The man's mouth opened, but no words came out. His friends shifted uncomfortably. The entire cafe seemed to be holding its breath. Emily's tears finally fell, not from humiliation, but from relief. Someone had finally stood up for her. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, calm, grounded, unshakable. The kind of silence that speaks louder than anger. The businessman muttered something under his breath and sat down, avoiding eye contact. His arrogance had melted away, replaced by quiet embarrassment. Keanu turned to Emily, his expression soft again. "It's okay," he said gently. "You handled it with grace." She nodded, still trembling, but her smile, this time it was real. And for the first time that afternoon, the cafe felt warm again. The cafe remained frozen in silence long after Keanu sat back down. You could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft clink of a spoon stirring sugar somewhere in the corner. Every sound magnified in the heavy quiet that followed his words. The businessmen, once loud and arrogant, now sat stiffly at their table, pretending to check their phones. The ringleader occasionally shot nervous glances toward Keanu but said nothing. His confidence had evaporated like steam from a cooling cup of coffee. Emily stood behind the counter, still trying to steady her breathing. Her eyes glistened with gratitude and disbelief. She'd been working here for almost 2 years, Long shifts, rude customers, constant exhaustion. But no one had ever defended her before. Not like that. Keanu, meanwhile, went back to sipping his coffee quietly as though nothing had happened. He wasn't seeking attention or approval. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos he'd just diffused. But something was stirring among the other customers. At a corner booth, a teenage boy whispered to his friend, "Wait a second. That guy looks so familiar." His friend frowned, squinting. "No, wait, that's not—" The boy's eyes widened. "Dude, that's Keanu Reeves." The whisper spread like wildfire through the cafe. Heads began to turn discreetly, then not so discreetly. Murmurs filled the room. "Is that really him?" "It can't be. He's too humble." "No, I'm sure. Look at him. That's Keanu Reeves." The businessman at the center of it all shifted uneasily, suddenly aware that people were staring, not at him, but at the quiet man he'd just mocked. Emily noticed the growing buzz, too. She glanced toward Keanu, her eyes widening as realization hit her. Keanu Reeves? The actor? The man who always tipped generously, who rode the subway, who treated everyone with kindness. Her heart raced. She couldn't believe it. The barista leaned close to her, whispering, "Oh my God, it really is him. I've seen all his movies." Emily froze for a moment, trying to process it all. The man who had just defended her wasn't just anyone. He was a global icon. But Keanu didn't act like one. He didn't use his fame to silence the bullies. He hadn't even revealed who he was. He simply chose respect when others didn't. The whispers grew louder. People began to take out their phones, but Keanu's calm presence somehow stopped them. There was something sacred about the moment. Quiet, dignified, almost spiritual. At the rude table, the ringleader finally spoke, his voice low and shaky. "Look, man, I didn't know who you were." "I didn't mean—" Keanu raised a hand, gently cutting him off. "It's not about who I am," he said softly. "It's about how you treat people when you think no one's watching." The words hit harder than any insult could. The businessman looked down, ashamed. His friend said nothing. A middle-aged woman sitting by the window leaned toward Emily. "Sweetheart, you okay?" Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yeah, I'm okay, just didn't expect this." Keanu gave her a reassuring smile before looking out the window again, as if the incident meant nothing at all. Outside, the sky had begun to clear. Sunlight filtered through the glass, landing gently on Keanu's table, almost poetic in timing. The customers exchanged quiet looks, realizing they were witnessing something rare, true humility in action. A father sitting near the door whispered to his young daughter, "That man just showed you what respect really means." The little girl smiled shyly. "He's like a real-life hero." Keanu didn't hear it, or maybe he did and chose not to react. Either way, his silence spoke volumes. In that small cafe, a room full of strangers had just learned a lesson, not from fame or power, but from quiet decency. Note, renamed slightly to keep continuity clear, Keanu's stand fits better here. The whispers had filled every corner of the cafe. Even those who hadn't seen the confrontation now sat upright, phones half raised, afraid to miss what might happen next. The businessmen sat in uneasy silence, their arrogance slowly dissolving into discomfort. The ringleader, the man with the gold watch, kept glancing at Keanu, his face a mix of guilt and embarrassment. His once loud laughter was gone. But shame, when mixed with pride, can turn ugly, and this man's ego wasn't ready to bow quietly. He leaned back in his chair, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. "You know what? Fine, I made a scene. Everyone's acting like I'm the bad guy here, but she—" He pointed toward Emily. "She messed up my suit. That's on her." A few people in the cafe frowned. The energy shifted again. Keanu didn't move, he just looked at him. That same quiet intensity in his eyes, the same stillness that could silence a storm. Emily took a step back, her voice soft. "Sir, I said I was sorry. I didn't mean—" The man cut her off sharply. "Just save it. Next time, maybe pay attention before you ruin someone's clothes." The words sliced through the air. You could almost hear hearts drop. Emily's eyes welled up again, her composure cracking. And that's when Keanu stood. He didn't slam his chair, didn't raise his voice. But his presence, calm, centered, powerful, made the entire room feel smaller. He walked over slowly, stopping just a few feet away from the table. "That's enough," he said quietly. The man smirked, still trying to save face. What, you gonna lecture me now? Keanu tilted his head slightly, his voice steady. No lectures. Just something you might need to hear. The man crossed his arms, pretending not to care, but his eyes betrayed him. Keanu continued, his tone gentle, yet it carried more weight than shouting ever could. You think strength is in how loud you are, or how much you own, but real strength, he paused, glancing toward Emily, is in how you treat people who can't give you anything in return. The entire cafe went silent. No phones moved. No one dared to breathe too loudly. You mocked someone who served you. You laughed when she was hurt. And for what? To feel important? To feel seen? Keanu's words weren't angry. They were reflective, almost sorrowful. It wasn't condemnation. It was truth. The world has enough pride, he continued softly. What it needs is compassion. The man's eyes dropped. His hands, once clenched in defiance, now trembled slightly on the table. Emily stood frozen behind the counter, her eyes wide, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Keanu turned to her with a small, reassuring nod. You did nothing wrong, he said gently. Then addressing the cafe, he added, no job is small. No person is beneath another. Remember that before you open your mouth to hurt someone trying their best. A wave of quiet murmurs spread across the room. Not gossip, but agreement, respect. The barista behind the counter whispered, wow, under her breath. The man who'd caused it all finally stood up, face flushed, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I'm sorry, he muttered, but the words came out barely audible. Keanu nodded once. That's a good start. He returned to his seat, as calm as he'd been before any of it began. Emily stood still for a moment, processing everything, then slowly approached his table. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling but full of sincerity. Keanu smiled faintly. You don't have to thank me. Just keep your kindness, and don't let people like that take it from you. She nodded, tears glimmering like tiny stars under the cafe lights. In that moment, the whole place seemed to exhale, like a collective weight had finally lifted. And for the first time that day, every person in that cafe understood something simple but unforgettable. Respect is silent power. The air in the cafe had shifted completely. The same people who once looked down at the waitress were now sitting in stunned silence, reflecting on the quiet strength they had just witnessed. Keanu sat back down, his face calm and unreadable. He wasn't basking in the moment. He didn't want applause or validation. To him, doing the right thing was simply normal. Emily, meanwhile, stood frozen near the counter, her eyes following him with quiet awe. Her heart was racing, but not from fear anymore, and it was gratitude. For the first time in a long time, someone had seen her, not as a waitress, but as a human being. The cafe manager, a tall man with a clipboard, hurried out from the kitchen, clearly unaware of what had happened. What's going on here? He asked, looking around at the tense faces. One of the businessmen, desperate to save face, pointed toward Emily. Your waitress spilled coffee on me. Then this guy decided to lecture me in front of everyone. The manager frowned, turning toward Emily, but before he could speak, a voice cut through the air, calm, composed, but impossible to ignore. She didn't do anything wrong, Keanu said quietly. The manager blinked, finally noticing who was sitting there. His eyes widened. Wait a second. Are you? Before he could even finish, recognition spread across his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. You're Keanu Reeves, he said softly, almost in disbelief. A collective gasp rippled through the cafe. Even those who had guessed earlier now felt the weight of certainty. Phones discreetly lifted, capturing the moment. The businessman who had been shouting earlier turned pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Keanu nodded slightly, humble as ever. Yes, he said, but that doesn't matter right now. He turned his attention to the manager again. What matters is how your staff is treated. She's been disrespected for doing her job, and no one should have to stand there and take it. The room was so quiet you could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from pride. The manager swallowed hard. You're absolutely right, Mr. Reeves. I'm so sorry. I should have been here sooner. He turned sharply toward the businessman. You need to apologize to her. Right now. The ringleader, face flushed with humiliation, stood up slowly. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, he mumbled, unable to meet Emily's gaze. Louder, the manager said firmly. I'm sorry, he repeated, louder this time, his voice trembling. Emily nodded politely, still too overwhelmed to speak. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his tone soft but deliberate. You know, he said, people remember moments like this, not the coffee, not the mistake, but the way you made someone feel. The man nodded shamefully. Unable to respond, Keanu continued, addressing the room now. The world doesn't change because of speeches or awards. It changes when ordinary people decide to be kind, even when no one's watching. Every person in that cafe felt the truth in his words. Even those who hadn't been involved were visibly moved. The manager, still in awe, cleared his throat. Mr. Reeves, I can't thank you enough. You just reminded us all of what respect really means. Keanu smiled faintly. You don't have to thank me. Just treat people better, that's all. He stood up, reached into his pocket, and placed a folded $100 bill on Emily's tray. Take care of yourself, he said softly. Emily stared at it, speechless. Sir, he shook his head gently. It's not for the spill. It's for how well you held yourself together. The entire cafe erupted in soft applause. Not loud, not forced, but heartfelt. Keanu nodded to the crowd once, then quietly began to leave. As he reached the door, sunlight broke through the clouds outside, illuminating the space around him like a scene out of a film. Just before stepping out, he turned back for a moment and said, kindness doesn't need an audience. And with that, he walked away. Calm, composed, leaving behind a silence filled not with shock, but with respect. The rude businessmen sat motionless, their arrogance stripped away. The manager placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. You did good, he whispered. She smiled through her tears. No, she said softly. He did good. Outside, Keanu pulled his hoodie up and disappeared into the city crowd. Just another quiet soul in a loud world, but one who had left behind a story that no one in that cafe would ever forget. Do you think the rude men deserve to be banned from the cafe after this? Share your opinion in the comments below. The sun had barely set when the first video hit the internet. A shaky handheld clip, filmed by a young woman sitting near the window, showed Keanu Reeves standing up in the cafe, calmly defending a waitress who had been humiliated moments earlier. At first, it was just another video on a crowded feed, but within hours something strange happened. The views began to skyrocket. 10,000, 100,000, a million, and then it exploded. People all over the world watched in silence as Keanu calmly told the truth that no one else in that cafe had dared to say. The clip captured not just a celebrity moment, but something deeper. Humility standing up to arrogance, humanity silencing cruelty. By morning, it was everywhere. Keanu kindness began trending globally. News outlets replayed the clip on repeat. Comment sections overflowed with stories of waiters, janitors, and workers who had faced the same kind of mockery, but wished someone had stood up for them, too. One comment read, he didn't just defend a waitress. He defended every person who's ever been disrespected for simply doing their job. Another said, Keanu doesn't act kindness. He lives it. Even the cafe itself couldn't escape the wave. The manager woke up to thousands of emails and messages, some praising him for his apology, others condemning the businessmen, and Emily? Her life changed overnight. She woke up to see her phone flooded with notifications, messages from strangers, reporters asking for interviews. Her face, once tearful in a corner of a cafe, was now being shared with headlines that read, Waitress defended by Keanu Reeves speaks out. Keanu's real-life hero moment. But Emily didn't care about fame. She wasn't looking for attention. She just wanted to tell one story. The story of what kindness felt like when it was least expected. A few days later, Keanu finally spoke publicly about the incident. He hadn't planned to, but the world wanted to hear from him. He appeared on a simple video call for a charity interview. No spotlight, no PR team, just him in a plain gray hoodie sitting in front of a bookshelf. When asked about the viral moment, he smiled gently, shaking his head. I wasn't trying to be a hero, he said softly. I just saw someone being treated unfairly. I think, Maybe we've all forgotten what respect looks like. The interviewer nodded, clearly moved. But people are calling this one of the most beautiful acts of kindness this year. How do you feel about that? Keanu looked down for a moment thinking. Then he said something that made the internet fall silent once again. Kindness shouldn't be rare enough to go viral. It should be normal. Those words echoed across platforms, shared, reposted, quoted, and then, without warning, Keanu turned the moment into something even greater. He announced that he would be donating $50,000, not to promote the cafe, not for publicity, but to a foundation that supports underpaid restaurant workers and single mothers in service jobs. Because, he added, some heroes don't wear suits or capes. They wear aprons. Meanwhile, Emily stood at the cafe counter still working her regular shifts, but everything around her felt different. The customers were kinder, more patient. The same people who once ignored her now said thank you with sincerity. And sometimes she would catch someone quietly filming or taking a selfie near her, because she was now that waitress. The one Keanu Reeves stood up for. But the fame never changed her. If anything, it made her quieter, more thoughtful. When asked by a journalist how her life had changed, she said, "It's not about me. It's about what he showed the world. That kindness still exists, that it can still win." Weeks later, Keanu visited the cafe again, quietly, without cameras, without warning. It was late evening. The cafe was half empty. Emily was wiping tables when she looked up and froze. He smiled gently. "Still here, huh?" She nodded, speechless for a moment. "You came back?" "Yeah," he said, sitting down at the same corner table. "I figured I owed you one more coffee." They both laughed softly. He looked around, noticing the framed photo on the wall, a candid shot from that day, showing him standing beside Emily. Beneath it, a simple quote was engraved on a plaque. "Kindness doesn't need an audience." Keanu smiled faintly. "You framed that?" Emily nodded. "The manager said it reminds people to be decent." He chuckled. "Good, then it was worth it." They talked for a while about life, struggle, and how small acts ripple farther than we think. As he stood to leave, he said quietly, "Take care. Emily, you don't know how many people you've inspired just by standing tall." Emily smiled. "You too, Mr. Reeves, thank you for reminding the world." He gave a small wave, slipped on his sunglasses, and walked out, disappearing once again into the quiet hum of the city. That night, Emily sat by the window watching the rain fall outside. The world had changed just a little, but it had, because sometimes it only takes one person, one quiet act, one moment of courage, to remind millions that kindness, real selfless kindness, still exists. And maybe that's the lesson Keanu Reeves keeps teaching us, that true greatness isn't found in fame or wealth, but in how we treat the people who can't offer us anything in return.